Good day. Let's go over dividing rational functions. So here we have two rational functions. Here's our first one. Here's our second one. Just keep in mind a rational function is when you have one polynomial divided by another. Okay, so step number one, what we're going to do is we're going to flip this second rational function. We're going to flip it and change this to a multiplication sign. Okay, this idea is pretty much the same as when you have fractions. One fraction being divided by another fraction, that what you do is you just multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, those same rules apply to rational functions. All the rules that apply to fractions apply to rational functions. All right, and here's what that looks like. We just simply inverted these and changed the division to a multiplication symbol. Next step, what we're going to do is we're going to factor. We're going to find all the factors. We're going to try and break these down and find the factors and then see if we can't cross out some of these factors. Here's what that looks like once they're factored. If you want to know how to factor these type of polynomials, go to my video on factoring polynomials. It's pretty simple. So this top one breaks down here. And, the bottom one breaks down into this. This one breaks down here. So now what we need to do is we just need to go ahead and cross some of these out. So we could see that this x minus 5 and this x minus 5, we could cancel those. We could cancel this x minus 2 and this x minus 2. And then it looks like pretty much that's all we could cancel out. So then the next step, what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and do this multiplication and kind of clean it up. So here's what we're left with. We're left with an x. We're left with an x plus 2, and we're left with an x minus 2. So our final answer, we get x times x plus 2. That is divided by x minus 2. So here's our answer when we finally get down to it. So I'm going to go ahead and write in here for you guys. Step number 3 is to cancel terms. Okay, here's our answer. Okay, here we go on our second problem. Remember, first step, what we're going to do, we're going to invert and then change this to a multiplication symbol. Okay, here's what that looks like. We simply inverted these and change this to a multiplication symbol. Okay, next step, what we want to do, we want to factor these out. Some of these may look a little bit difficult, so I'm going to go ahead and factor those out with you. Okay, our first polynomial that we're going to factor is the numerator for the first rational expression. Okay, remember our trick is that we're going to multiply the two outer terms. That's going to give us a negative 30. Then we're going to find factors of negative 30 that when added together give us the middle term of negative 1. So let's go ahead and think of a couple factors of negative 30. Of course, we have 3 and 10. We have 2 and 15. We have 5 and 6. And if you think about it, 5 minus 6, that'll give us a negative 1. 5 minus 6 will give us negative 1. So what we could do is we could put the negative sign in front of the 6. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go like this, 2x, 2x. What you do is you break apart this first one. And you're going to put one of them plus 5, another one minus 6. And then you're going to see if you can reduce these in any way. So we know this one is reduced because there's no common factors between 2 and 5. This one we could reduce further because 2 is a common factor between both 2 and negative 6. So we're going to divide this by 2, this by 2. So our first term we have 2x plus 5. Our second one we're going to have x minus 3. So there it is. There is 2x squared minus x minus 15, once it's all the way factored, is 2x plus 5, x minus 3. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and erase this top one and replace it with these two, with these factors here. Okay, so there it is on the numerator of the first rational expression. Next one, let's go ahead and see if we can't factor this, x squared minus 2x minus 3. So there we have x squared minus 2x minus 3. Okay, remember what we're going to do is we're going to multiply the two outer terms. That's 1 times negative 3, which gives us negative 3. We're going to find factors of negative 3 that when added together give us this middle term of negative 2. And if you think about it, right off the bat, that's going to be a positive 1 and a negative 3. Okay, 1 times negative 3. 1 times negative 3 gives us negative 3. So these are the factors. And what we're going to do is we're going to split up the first term. And we're going to say x plus 1, x minus 3. So here are the factors of this bottom term. So I could go ahead and fill those in. X plus 1, x minus 3. Okay, our next term comes from the numerator of the second rational expression. Here we have 1 minus x squared. If you guys know your algebra, you will recognize that this is a difference of squares. In other words, what we have is 1 minus x, 1 plus x. Okay, there's your difference of squares formula. So if I multiply these back out, let's go ahead and do that for you. 1 times 1 gives us 1. 1 times positive x gives us positive x. Negative x times 1 gives us negative x. And then negative x times x gives us negative x squared. Okay, these two middle terms cancel out each other. What we're left with is 1 minus x squared. So that's how the difference of squares formula works. So we have for our numerator 1 minus x, 1 plus x. Okay, and our final polynomial here is the one that comes from the denominator of the second rational function. Here it is 2x squared plus 3x minus 5. We do our trick. We multiply the two outer terms to get negative 10. We're going to find factors of negative 10 that when added together give us the middle term of positive 3x. And if you think about it, perhaps a positive 5 and a negative 2. Negative 2, positive 5. Okay, so when you add those two together, 5 and negative 2, you get a positive 3. So what we're going to do, we break apart that first term kind of like so. Put a negative 2 here, positive 5 here. And then we see if we can't reduce these any further. It looks like the first one we could reduce if we divide by 2. So what we're left with is x minus 1 times 2x plus 5. So there it is factored out. 2x squared plus 3x minus 5, once factored, is x minus 1 multiplied by 2x plus 5. Okay, placing those in the denominator. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cancel out terms. We could see right away the x minus 3 and the x minus 3 will cancel out. This 2x plus 5 and this 2x plus 5 will cancel out. And here I want you guys to notice something. This 1 plus x and this x plus 1. Now, if I show you 1 plus x, I'm going to tell you that that's the exact same as x plus 1. And if you think about it, if I have 5 plus 3, that's the same as 3 plus 5. Okay, I'm allowed to do this. You're allowed to kind of switch the places of these. So I wanted to point that out to show you that this term and this term here, they're equal, which means that we could cancel those out. So it looks like what we're left with is 1 minus x over x minus 1. And there's our final answer. 1 minus x over x minus 1. Now, mostly you could say that you're done at this point, but I want to show you guys something kind of cool. That if I have 1 minus x over x minus 1, if I were to factor out a negative 1, so if I were to factor out a negative 1, let's say negative 1 times, well, negative 1 factored out of 1, okay, that's going to leave me negative 1. Because negative 1 times negative 1 will give me a positive 1. If I factor out a negative 1 over negative x, what I'm left with is positive x. Okay. Now just switching these terms, what we're left with is negative 1 times x minus 1 divided by x minus 1. These two terms could cancel out. What we're left with is the negative 1. So we could say our final answer is negative 1. Okay, I kind of noticed a bad habit that I was doing as I was going along, and that was confusing the words expression and terms. So I want to clarify that what an expression is. An expression is when you have a bunch of terms. So terms and expressions. An expression is a bunch of terms separated by plus and minus signs. So in this first polynomial, we'll say this polynomial expression has 3 terms. Okay, so terms are just any number of things being multiplied together. So you could have like 2x squared, y cubed, ab squared. Okay, that's just one term. Okay, another term could be just something simple, 2. Positive 2. Negative 3x. These are each terms. So I want to apologize for saying that earlier. I was kind of confusing my algebra vocabulary. I haven't used it in such a long while. But just to reiterate, an expression is a bunch of terms together separated by plus and minus signs. Okay, there's your expression. Okay, I thought I'd clarify that. I didn't want to confuse you guys. So if you go back and look over at my videos, just keep in mind that this is the true definition of what an expression and what a term is. Okay, here it is for you. So here's your terms. Okay, and here's your expression, just this side right here. Okay, last problem, let's divide these rational functions. So the first step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert this second rational function. I'm going to invert, or what we call the reciprocal, and I'm going to change the division sign to a multiplication sign. Okay, here's what that looks like. We inverted and changed the division to a multiplication. This is called the reciprocal. Okay, reciprocal. Okay, next up what I want to do is I want to factor these so we could cancel some expressions. Okay, let's do the first one there. We have x squared minus 6x plus 5. So to factor this, we do our trick. We multiply these last two terms together. Keep in mind that there's a coefficient in front of the x squared. It's kind of invisible, but there's always a 1 there. Okay, so 1 times 5, that's going to give us 5. And we need to find factors of 5 that when added together will give us a negative 6. So there's our negative 6. What two factors of 5 will give us one added, a negative 6? If you think about it, that's a negative 1 and negative 5. All right, if I multiply negative 1 times negative 5, negative 1 times negative 5 gives me a positive 5. So there's our two factors, negative 1 and negative 5. What I want to do at this point is I want to break down the first term. Here I'm going to say negative 1 and negative 5. So there it is. Here is our factor. Here is our factor of the first polynomial. We're going to go ahead and put this into the numerator for the first rational function. Okay, and I just kind of brought down this other rational function. I just kind of brought it down and put it in because You can't really reduce this any further, so this is already reduced as far as it can be. So we're not factoring anything here, so I just kind of brought it down. The only thing we're left with is to factor this x squared minus 25. If you think about it, those are a difference of squares. So we have x minus 5, x plus 5 as our factors. Now for the final step, all we're going to do is cancel like expressions. So we have an x minus 5 and x minus 5. We have an x plus 5 and an x plus 5. An x minus 1 and an x minus 1. So it looks like everything's canceled out, which means that our answer is 1. Why is our answer 1? Is because if you think about it, there's an invisible 1 in front of everything. People seem to not realize this at times, that when I have like, let's say 3x squared plus y squared, that in front of this y squared there's a 1. If I have x plus 6, there's an invisible 1 there. Okay, we just don't always write it in, but it's there. So what we're left with is kind of 1 over 1 times 1 over 1. 1 times 1, that equals 1. So 1 is our final answer, the number 1. Okay, thanks for bearing with me. Once again, I want to apologize for messing up my algebra terminology. I'm kind of glad I caught myself on that, so I didn't want to mislead you. And that was the difference between expressions and terms. So once again, an expression is a number of terms put together. And terms are just, x squared, y squared, 5xy squared. These are all the terms. I want to also point out the coefficient. Coefficient is the number in front of these. These are called your variables, x's and y's. You could say the alphabet, the alphabet numbers. Those are your variables, and your constant is a kind of a number off by itself. Okay, here's your constant. Here's your coefficient. Here's your variable. It's kind of important to go over these basic terms. There's a lot to it. Once again, I just want to apologize for messing that up. It's been a while since I've used any terms, algebra vocabulary, but I think I'm leading you guys on the right track. I just want to say thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please leave in the comments below. Don't forget to like these videos, and if you want to see more, just go ahead and subscribe. Thank you.